But it was also at that moment that they were like, okay, well, we always thought you were good because you were our daughter. And your friends always thought you were good because you've been doing stand up in San Francisco for however long.
Yeah.
But now it's like, NBC thinks you're good,
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make you.
Hello, I'm Tim Barnes. You are the genre, and in every episode of this show, I ask a great new guest about the first genre that inspired them, the first craft that they pursued, and how they feel about that first pursuit now. In this episode, I'm talking to comedian and TV writer Alexandria Love. Alexandria and I first met, I guess, digitally when we were writers for The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, and now she's writing for After Midnight. So I didn't know much about her until this very conversation, and I'm excited to dive in. So please enjoy this conversation with Alexandria Love. Thank you for joining me on the show. I feel like we've only met once in person, I want to say.
We have only met once in person, and yet I feel like we're lifelong friends.
Yes. You The point of connection is, that lovely program.
That great, wonderful industry darling that we worked at.
The Tonight Show.
Tonight Show, starring America's sweetheart, Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah. Hey, we both probably want to do a stand-up set on there one day, right? We got nothing.
We did our best.
And then, we met in person once. And then you were like, it was so awesome that you agreed to, write some jokes on my newsletter.
So fun.
And I think you do have a very interesting path, because I know that on top of doing stand-up and writing for television, you do things like write short stories and stuff like that, right?
I do. Yeah, man. Are we starting? Is this where it starts?
Yeah.
Oh man, dude, my whole trajectory a little bit all over the place. Like I consider myself like a writer first. But yeah, I definitely, when I didn't think that comedy was an avenue for me, because I just didn't see people like me doing comedy, I was like, okay, what else can I do? And then, it became a lot of short stories. I've written like a book that I never published. I've written lots of stuff. But I always came back to mama comedy, because that's my one true love.
Wait, what's this book that you wrote?
Oh my God. I wrote a book. This is so lame, dude. I wrote a book about it was like a murder mystery based in the comedy scene of San Francisco.
That sounds incredible. Why is that not on Hulu right now?
Because and here's the thing is that I still love this book and I still love reading it. I've never shared it with any. Actually, you're my first friend I've ever told about it. Because I just don't think it's relatable for people. Like sometimes I feel like when artists are writing art about making art, it becomes too like meta for like normal people. Like if I showed that book to my parents, and my parents love everything I've ever done, but if I showed that book to my parents, it'd be like, we don't really get this, And unfortunately, like that's my metric for deciding if something is successful enough for me to put it out in the world, is like, do my parents get it? Do my friends that are not comedians get it? And if not, then I.
But wait. Usually... Have your parents read the book?
No.
Well, that's the thing. That's the point of the book. The book is supposed to invite people into that world.
I can't, man. I can't. Because there's already so much other stuff. Like I try to silo like when I give people stuff, Yeah. Like there was a period that I would just just bore my friends with pilots, And then I realized if I keep giving people pilots that are like mediocre, not where I need them to be, then eventually they're going to stop reading them. They haven't, but eventually I can't rely on them to continue to read my mediocre half-assed work. And so I was like, I'll wait until everything is exactly where I want it to be for the book. And it's been I've been doing comedy in San Francisco, or comedy in general, for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's about how long I've been writing this book, and it's still not close to ready.
Wow. Well, I love that you have these dual passions. And do you find that stand-up is similar to the prose style of writing narrative stories?
That's such a good question. Sometimes I feel like I try to write comedy in a way that's proseful, and then I feel like it trying to get too focused on like the form tends to make me detach from like what comedy is supposed to be, which is supposed to be like a very loose, connected form of comedy. I'm not supposed to be connected to the form. I'm supposed to be connected to audience members. And when I'm connected to the form, the audience can tell, and it sucks.
I think like the perfect fusion of that, I always go back to like George Carlin. George Carlin, just as funny on the page as he is on stage, and not a lot of people can get away with that.
I'm
like
actually
both are equally.
I'm not equal at all. I'm way more funny, and I see it in the writer's room that I'm in right now. I am so funny on the page, and then I say something in the room, and they're like, "What the fuck was that?" Like, like the fact that I got away with being a stand-up comedian for so long is insane.
Well, I think we both probably have that same affliction where I know for a fact that I am the type of, and I think this year I'm going to ease back into doing stand-up.
Okay,
I haven't for the last few years, but I know that I'm the type of stand-up that when people see me, they go, "That's a good writer." It's never like
exactly.
That's
and it hurts my heart. It hurts my heart because I here's the thing. About you asked like what like my actual starting point was.
Yeah.
I have been a performer my entire life. I started performing when I was a little kid. I used to write plays for me and my cousins to do, me and the girls at school to do, where we would do like, song and dance numbers. Like I grew up like taking music lessons. I grew up like doing all this different stuff. And yet, no matter how hard I try to be like this amazing performer, I always they're like, "No, get back in your fucking office and write, you loser. No one wants to see you up there dancing."
Yeah.
Well, I want to think of myself like Donald Glover, but I'm not.
Well, I like the status. I always liked, the status of like I don't know, Steve Urkel was the first genre that, even though he's a performer, I always liked the,
that's your guy, Steve Urkel?
That's my guy. That's my guy. Yeah, that's the first genre that called that to me. I think I've never said that on the show. I usually say science fiction, but.
But wait, what's the genre that you would attribute to Steve Urkel?
Steve Urkel is okay. Now I will say that Steve Urkel is sci-fi. Steve Urkel is a science fictional character. I felt seen by him. But I also know that he was just Jerry Lewis written by white writers for a black actor. He really is he is a science experiment. He is.
That's very funny and very there's an awareness there that I don't think that even the writers had. I love that.
There's something bizarrely universal, and I think there is something fascinating to me, and I'm trying to carve my way out of it. But this aspiration to be a universal sort of black presence.
And when we were growing up, I imagine you're about the same age as me. There were no black people in sci-fi. There was no niggas in space,
Yeah.
Like Steve Urkel was building time machines and shit. And like you're right. I'm trying to think of like a contemporary like sci-fi person in like black culture, and they're kind of Uhura, but that's it.
Yeah,
dude, we didn't have anything.
He accidentally filled a void. He was a side character, and he started eating. He became Galactus and started eating up the whole show.
Yeah. So I mean. So that's okay. Let me ask you a question. I know this is your podcast. You're supposed to be talking to me, but how much of that like bled into your work? Like, I know you had a short. You had Maurice on Mars, right? That was the name of it.
Yeah, that was the name of my cartoon.
How much of that bled? Has Steve Urkel is in Maurice?
I never thought about that too, but he definitely became more Maurice as things progress with the show.
Nice.
At first, he was going to be a little bit more. He became a little more. It's a cartoon. I swear, I'm not saying. He became a little more animated than I originally intended. But this show is not about me. It is about you. Do you do this in therapy sessions?
I do. How'd you know? Stop. I know everything about my therapist. She has a kid.
Testing out all your spy skills.
Like, you're right. This is like the first time we've actually had like a real conversation outside of me like being at a party. Like, so this is nice. I wanted to connect with you.
Yeah, this is good. But I should be asking you, what's the first genre that called that to you when you were a kid?
You gave me this as a question ahead of time, and I still could not come up with an answer because there's so many different answers to that. Like, when I was a kid, I think my favorite genre, like for real, was comedy. Like I've always been obsessed. Like if you ask my family, they'll tell you that they knew that I wanted to be a TV writer from like a very, very like young age, you know? But it's funny because like the older we get, and you've been a comedian a long time too, the longer we are in comedy, the harder it is to ingest new comedic material.
Yes.
Because it's hard to sit there and not think of the mechanics behind it. Like this is like, I can't watch like, a new comedy movie coming out because I'm like, oh, this is the joke that I would have gone with here. These are the beats that I would have made. And it makes it more like doing homework or doing like a safari versus like you sitting there and laughing at it. But when I was a kid, I used to just eat that shit up. I came from a stand-up household, man. Like my parents, like they had like my dad had like records upon records, Pryor, Fox, Eddie Murphy, who was the guy that did Bebe's Kids? That guy.
Oh yeah.
Robin Harris.
Robin Harris. Have you ever seen, there is, what was it called? There was a comedy club in LA, and there's a Robin Harris, an entire show hosted by him on Amazon that you can watch.
I did like
a live
know that.
show. It's why am I forgetting all of the names? But you have to check it out because it's such a specific portal. There's like people doing sketches, and it's just like authentically captured night in the LA comedy scene with him.
Because like that's like what and obviously when I was really, really little, I didn't understand the jokes or anything, but like I do like, I was not, you're not going to believe this, unlike every other comedian on the planet, but I was not super popular growing up. But like I was smart, number one, and I was able to like make the kids laugh. I was able to make my parents laugh enough to like get me out of trouble. And so I found that comedy was like kind of like the key to like people ignoring other major glaring flaws in my personality and being like, hey, she's weird, but she is funny and she doesn't know what she's doing. And so the older I got, the more I just like, I became so attached to comedy as like a concept. Like everything I did, like, not to quote Pete Holmes, was like in service of capital C comedy, which is like so lame to say in retrospect, but I really truly believed it. Because like I remember the day that I told my parents I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. I told them it was after I had just seen Bernie Mac's "I Ain't Scared of You Motherfuckers" routine. And we were watching in my parents' room, and I was like, Mom, Dad, I want to be a stand-up comedian. And they were like, no, you don't. You want to be a lawyer. And I was like, absolutely, you're right. I'm so sorry for wasting you guys' time. And then I learned about a guy named Greg Giraldo who was both. And I was like, oh man, I absolutely can be, a smart person, a lawyer. The law thing I dropped eventually once I realized what I actually really wanted to do and where my talents lied. But I realized that I didn't have to pigeonhole myself into what other people expected from me. I didn't have to use funny as like a crutch, but it was like something that like it always captivated me. It was always something that it was the only thing I really felt like sitting down and like breaking apart, Yeah. I'm babbling.
Oh, no, you're not. I guess like I'm wondering, do you feel like if you were, what age were you when you said that again?
Oh, I probably saw the Bernie Mac set. I was under 10. I was way too young. I was way too young. I was maybe 8. I'm gonna say 8.
There's a specific magic to that set. I mean, Def Jam, comedy, all of that. And I'm wondering if you were 10 years old now, would there be anything for you to witness that would give you that same, like, I guess I'm asking, like, how do you feel about the change of comedy since that we've experienced? Like, part of us placing us into that pantheon.
Number one, there's too many comedians. Some of these people have to die. We just have to start killing off comedians. There's too many. No, I think that it's unfortunate, and I talk about this a lot with some of my friends. I feel like the career that I thought I was going into doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. Like we were talking about this in the writers' room the other day. Like, if we were writing comedy in like the 90s, we would have already had, a bunch of different reps. We would have had like a set on Premium Blend by now. We would have been really different. part of our lives. But Comedy Central doesn't exist in the same way that it used to. Like the stand-up is less of a meritocracy, if it ever was, and more of about like who can sell the most seats, who has the most followers on Instagram, who has the most followers on TikTok. And that feels disparate from what I was taught. Like I was taught that if you sit down and I was taught like, the reason why I was so weary to go into comedy was like, I'm a Black girl who is kind of outside of the norm. I'm not alt, but I'm outside of the norm of like the normal club scene. And so I kind of never thought that comedy was for me. And then I realized like, they were like, if you sit down and you work hard and you make the right friends, like you can do anything. And I truly believe that until I got to this point where I'm just like, I can't give that same advice to somebody that's coming up behind me because it's not like that. Now I would have to say, start posting online, start getting followers, like, see if you can get some club dates, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as grinding it out at clubs 7 nights a week like I used to have to do, Yeah,
it's not the same thing at all. And I guess what I'm wondering is the clips that both of us saw that inspired us to want to maybe do comedy, be comedians, do stand-up. There was this feeling of love attached to it all. Not to be a weird poetic freak, but I just feel like there was this feeling of like, oh, you did this Tonight Show set with Johnny Carson, and it was, I guess, the limitations, but there was this feeling of like a camaraderie and love. Like there's a social group that you want to become a part of. That's often a part of. And I don't know. It feels for me, and this might be the jaded thing of being in it as long as we have. It feels like that's kind of gone.
It is gone. It's gone. But like, and it's so funny because like I used to see myself in places that like I would not have been welcome. Like I used to really love the Blue Collar Comedy Tour guys. Like I used to watch them so much in high school, and everyone's just like, why? Like I used to stay up late when I was a kid watching like Whose Line Is It Anyway, Insomniac, and I used to see like warmth in those places. I saw warmth in Insomniac. That means that I'm not too well. But I saw this as like, it's like a place that like, I saw it was like idyllic, like Disneyland. I was like, one day if I play my cards right, maybe I'll make it to Insomniac with Dave Attell. Maybe I'll make it to The Root of All Evil. Maybe I'll make it to At Midnight. I kind of did make it to At Midnight. That's
congrats. I haven't even mentioned that yet. Yes, you are a writer on After Midnight. I keep forgetting that's the new
I'll allow it. But that was like, that was like the one moment that I was just like, oh, like, this one little piece of the promised land that I thought that was unattainable is still an option. And so that's why part of me, not to be like all comedy purist, Professor Comedy, Captain Comedy, but like I maintain that if us old heads continue to hold ourselves to that standard of like the meritocracy of like the 80s, 90s, and aughts, I think it can still come back. I have a lot of resentment for like what the internet has done to the consumerism of comedy, not only because of how hard it's made it for people, who are just grinding, but also because of how it's changed the way the audiences interact with comedians. Because now they heckle and they think they're helping because they're getting us a clip. And I fucking hate that. Do not talk to me. But like, I still have this absolutely very romantic image of it. I still think that it's possible for us to bring comedy back to like what it was. But like, also if it doesn't go back to what it was, I'm optimistic that maybe it could be better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, part of me potentially re-entering the scene this year is that I'm just going to pretend it's the 90s. I'm not going to worry about clips. I'm not going to worry about, I'm just going to pretend that the system that inspired me still exists.
Because we're writers, man. That's the thing, is that a lot of these people, and not to disparage like people that, do TikTok and Instagram as their standard method of getting their comedy out there. But like the method for us was a little bit different because we were taught that we're Black. We had to be better writers than a lot of other people, And I still maintain that if you are undeniably good, then it's going to be a little bit easier for us. I fucking hope so. I'm knocking on wood right now because sometimes it's hard to believe.
Well, going back to that love thing, you grew up in a household that had a passion for stand-up, and do you think that was a part of it? Like something about the Bernie Mac clip, and you feel like this is
And let me tell you, my childhood was not great. My parents and I, we have our moments, but I will say this, that it was always like it was a get out of jail free card. If I said something funny enough, like it could change, like the whole mood of the house could be so bad and stay bad for like a very long time. But if there was something funny enough to break the tension, it could be something that kind of broke the tension. And that was like, I got bullied relentlessly, like K through 12, but if I said something funny enough to get people off my back, like it would help, And so, I kind of did use that as like my get out of jail free card a little bit, and I still kind of do. I remember I got pulled over. I had an incident with the police in San Francisco a couple of years ago. That was like really scary. And I was getting profiled. They had no reason to talk to me. But I remember kind of like, they explained to me like the bullshit reason why they had parked me in. I was parked. And they were just like, oh, well, we thought that your car was kind of like connected to other burglaries in the area. And I just kind of like nodded at them and I was like, copy that. And they were like, oh God. Okay. We'll leave her alone. She's mad. And that broke the tension for all of us. And I didn't get shot that day. So that's pretty cool.
And then, so you mentioned this pursuit of comedy with a capital C, and I think everyone who gets into becoming a stand-up moves, away from their hometown or whatever to do it. How do you define what's going on in our minds at that stage?
What stage? What do you mean?
That stage where you really set out and you're like, this is what I'm going to do, and I was always fascinated by this daytime life and nighttime life of comedians. We are sort of superheroes, where it's like a completely different reality. And then at whatever your day job is, it's this sort of feeling of no one knows who I was last night. And that feels kind of cool.
Well, I hated it. I hated it so much because there was a point in my life where I was waking up. I was working 9 to 5 at a publishing house in Oakland. And then I would go to grad school from like 6 to 8. And then from 8 to 10, I would be doing stand up. And I would have like a great fucking set at like, the Punchline or like Cobb's or like one of the big clubs or something. And then I have to go back to work at 9 a.m. the next day with all these people that like don't know. I'm like a big deal, you piece of, they were nice people. I'm not talking shit about them. But my point is that like the double life, I didn't like. I don't like that I had to compartmentalize myself in like in a different environment. I'm always better. Like I'm better at this job after midnight. I was better at Fallon than I ever was at any, sort of corporate job because I wasn't allowed to be myself. I could never be myself, So like, I feel like I'm in that point right now. You're a nerd. So, in Endgame when the Hulk became Professor Hulk, where he was able to merge like both sides of his personality. And like that, I feel like that's when I become like the most like centered. I feel like, I feel good. I mean, no, I don't, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. So wait, but the three things you say you were doing actually sound really cool. You were doing stand-up at night, you were working at a publishing house, and you were in grad school.
Yes.
Objectively, 3, it's not the worst 3 things.
No, not the worst, but they were hard. They were hard to do every single day, 5 days a week.
What were you doing at the publishing house?
I was doing, so they had me start out in marketing communications. That's what I got my master's degree in, was communications. And which it worked because, I still can fall back on that when eventually they kick me out of CBS. But one thing that I loved about that place is that they allowed me to kind of change the course of what I did there. They realized that I was not great at marketing, but I was good at writing. And so they kind of had me develop, this is funny in retrospect, they had me develop all of the company's DEI pillars, which I'm sure still exist today. The DEI
I'm sure Elon Musk just launched those into space right now.
They're on Jupiter and they're living it up.
The DEI pillars of Jupiter. That's a great sci-fi novel.
I would read the shit out of that. We should write that pilot. But yeah, I became the person that would write the marketing for like it was a lot of books for like how to become a better person. Like it was self-help, but also like for like companies, like they were like almost like B2B, like here's how you can make a better working environment for your workers of color. It's a lot of books that are like actually really important. So my job was kind of like to read all of those books and then to come up with different like pillars of information. Like here's the information that you need to know if you're interested in buying this book, and here's all the things that you could learn from it. That was kind of my job. And then I left that job when I got Fallon. And let me tell you something really cute. Because I didn't even know that they appreciated me because I was still being Bruce Banner during the day and, the Hulk at night. But on the day that I left, like they had like a whole little like fake late night show to say goodbye to me.
Oh, that's great.
Really, really cute.
That's incredible. And let's remind everyone that this was like when the world really was falling apart.
This was COVID. This was COVID times, man. They set up a Zoom for me. It was so sweet. I was like, I wish that I'd shown you guys my actual person. I wish you guys had never seen me smile once. I really do. Because this was really nice.
So the first genre that called out to you was comedy. Is there what is the first official craft that you pursued? Have we covered this already?
Well, I'm going to say that the first craft that I pursued was actually music.
Music.
I started playing piano when I was really young, and then I got into guitar. I've always been a singer. My thing was like, I need to get some stuff out.
Yeah.
And so I would like
emotions to process.
I have some things I got to talk through. And so I was like kind of like a songwriter, and I realized that like, I can still play, I can still sing, but I never really had like the penchant for like, music production. I never really had like the penchant for like music theory. And so it kind of fell on the wayside, became more of a hobby, still something I love to do. But there was a point that I thought of marrying my two things. And then I realized that comedians hate that. Comedians don't like it when you do musical comedy because they're mad, because they're jealous, because you can do two things.
Yeah.
But I did start out as like I used to sing in like my school talent shows and stuff like that. And I used to really like make a lot of music. And I'm sure that I could have been okay at it, but I think that I picked correctly. I chose wisely.
Nice. It's crazy. Everything you're saying is like you're perfect for the Tonight Show.
Yeah, man. I was working with a musical person on the Tonight Show, and that was really great because then I kind of got to bring in like, oh yeah, like I still remember how music works, and that was really fun to do.
Yeah.
I feel like I've had a longer career than I have. I feel like a comic that's like, in her late 60s. That's kind of just like, I've been everywhere, kid. I've been on the road. I've been to Monaco. I feel like I'm still very much at the beginning of my career. And I'm happy about the mistakes that I've made. That have led me here right now.
Yeah. And think about this multiple life thing. I think every comedian experiences that, or it's not easy to just be a road dog or whatever. And I never even specifically wanted that.
Yeah.
But it is funny how...
but you never wanted to be... I'm sorry to break you off, but you never wanted to have like a road dog, like, year or two?
I think now I kind of think about it, but it never really was. I really was the type where I wanted to kind of be a guy about town. And I guess it's the Seinfeld effect, like watching the show Seinfeld. He wasn't doing the road.
He didn't go on the road.
So that was he had a nice apartment off of just doing Caroline's.
Upper West Side. He did Caroline's once a week, and he had an apartment in the Upper West Side. I was like, dude, this is not realistic. You need roommates, man.
But I guess it always was that I wanted to be a personality that could lead into other things. So I think the part of the world of comedy that I'm sad about fading is that there isn't this feeling of a singular grand entrance. And a lot of what I was aspiring to was like, oh, okay, I'll do a Conan set. That'll, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's gone. And that's really sad.
It is sad. Like you see like these things that were like the pinnacle of success for us when like we were growing up. Like when I was a kid, I not kid, but once I realized that I was okay at stand up and that I could possibly have a career in it, my goal was like, TV writer or road dog. And I reached both of those peaks. And I thought that meant, and in the 90s, maybe it did mean like, I was like, I'm set. I'm good. I never had to do a single fucking thing ever again. But the rules have changed, I still love to go on the road, but I do that because I love it, not because there's millions of dollars waiting for me at all these clubs,
Yeah. But then a couple months ago, I had dinner with a friend, and I forget what the question was, but I got exhausted by it, and I kind of paused and I went, I've lived too many lives. And it kind of threw everyone off, but that is kind of like the magical feeling of what we've gone through, right? Like, don't you at some point just feel like, I don't know, like, because I'm from LA, I started comedy in Chicago, now been in New York, and
exactly. I it's so funny because like I knew that the road was going to age us because like I seen comedians that are our age now, like in the 90s, that look like they were 75. And like I knew that this like, and now I get it. And now at the ripe old age of 32, I deeply understand why they were always so tired, because it does feel, because you're right. Like there were periods where you were living a double life, like you were trying to make ends meet while you even figure out if you were good at it. And then there's that point, that like jumping off point where you're just like, I have to either focus on this entirely or I have to consider myself a hobbyist. Not that people that have full-time jobs are hobbyists, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like when you do decide to make that choice, it's a scary moment and it does age you, I feel like that was like a lot of people say you become an adult when you have a child. But for me, like the moment that I was like, okay, I'm giving up everything and I'm moving to New York to write on the Tonight Show at a job that I don't know that I'm going to have for too long. Like that was a moment that I was like, oh shit, this is an adult decision. I'm an adult now, you know?
Yeah, take that leap. Don't scroll away. You Are the Genre. We'll be right back after the break. Here we are in the middle of the show where I remind you that You Are the Genre is a listener-supported podcast. So I do this partly for the love of great conversation, but also my passion for bringing those great conversations to you. If you'd like to support the podcast, there are a few ways you can do it. You can just give it a nice rating and note, a comment in wherever platform you're listening to it in. You can also subscribe to the newsletter associated with the podcast. There's a link to that in your show notes. You can choose a free subscription, which gives you updates on the latest episodes out for the public. But you can also upgrade to a paid subscription, which gives you a few things. It gives you a paid access to things that I do in the newsletter, like writing jokes to subscribers. But you also get advanced episodes of this very podcast. Before the whole world gets to hear it, you get to hear it first. So those are some of the things you get with that. I also use this little break in the middle of the show to talk about something that I've simply been enjoying. And right now, I'm enjoying reading about Octavia Butler. I haven't gotten the chance to dive into her novels just yet. I'm excited to do that. But just reading tidbits about her life has been absolutely fascinating. And watching interviews with her. She was an incredible, incredible human being. So there you have it. Do some deep diving on Octavia Butler. Subscribe and like the podcast. And consider joining the newsletter. If you'd like to do that last thing, get all of the information you need at youarethegenre.com. Now, back to the episode. Where were we? So wait, music. How did that into your life in your youth? Like, what age was it that you started to
early? I came from my dad loved stand-up and he loved music. He still loves both of those things. And music was the thing that in my household that like comedy could, like how comedy always hit with my dad. And music always hit with my dad. Comedy did not always hit with my mom. My mom, it's a little bit different. I remember there was one day that like I was like really, really little. It was when Prince played at the Super Bowl,
Oh, yeah.
And my mom
it actually started to rain.
It actually started to rain. And I was in trouble for something big. I was in trouble for something really bad that week. And I was not a kid that got into trouble a lot, but I was in trouble that week. And I remember my mom was just pissed off at me and she was helping me with my homework. And then it was Sunday night. And then that started happening and the rain started to fall and Prince came out with the fucking guitar. And that's my mom's all-time favorite guy. Like, and all of a sudden the whole everything that I did, it was like, it didn't even matter,
The rain washed it.
The rain washed it away, And so like, I feel like maybe I used comedy and music as a way to like, fix my surroundings a little bit, make things a little bit more comfortable for me because a lot of my life was not super comfortable. But as a result, I developed like this like real love for it, and on some level, it was also something I did to connect with other people because I realized that like, my peers who I also didn't connect with really loved comedy too. And it's like, okay, well, I can understand this. I get comedy, And so, it was just like this way to like to add a cushion around me so that the world didn't hurt so much all the time. It sounds sad, but that's what happened, you know? I mean, I made it work. And it was a survival technique. And the fact that I was able to number one, survive, not die. Number two, make it into like any semblance of a career. Like, you know, music, I probably never would have been like a major pop star. I probably wouldn't have made it to like the level that I'm at right now with comedy, with music. But I was always so grateful to have something that I could use to connect with people in every way, you know?
Do you feel like similar to what we were talking about of being the type of comic when people see you perform, they go, that's a good writer? Do you feel like when people saw you?
It hurts every time you say it. I know you're not saying it to me. Well, honestly, I've always yes. There was a period in my stand-up where maybe that wasn't the case because I feel like I said, like the person I am on the page and the person I am on stage is very different. And so I was so afraid. I started out doing comedy technically in the city of San Jose. And San Jose is not a city known for its cerebralness. You know, it wasn't a city like my job in San Jose was to fight against the TV behind me that was playing the Sharks game. And I had to yell at them and get their attention, be louder than the TV. And that's how I got attention in San Jose. But when I started doing comedy seriously in San Francisco, it's like, okay, these crowds are a little bit more nuanced. There's no TV playing behind me. I'm playing at clubs. I have to be smart, you know? And so, yes, at the beginning of my career, maybe I was not known for like my writing style. I was basically still saving that for like, you know, writing like plays, writing books, like being a novelist and all the different stuff. But once I realized that like I could turn like joke writing into like a science, like once I got it down to a formula, that became something that I relied on a lot more. And it's so good because like I sometimes like I don't want to be all, you know, loud. I don't want to be like an extra big personality. Like I do want my jokes to work even when I'm feeling low energy. I want them to work even in a room where, you know, everybody is super quiet. Everybody before me just bombed, you know, like that. That's the goal. So yes, I hear it a lot now and I'm thankful for it, but that's not how I started.
Do you remember any of your lyrics or do you still write lyrics?
No, I don't really write music anymore. I still play music, but I don't really write music anymore. Well, here's something I do, and I've never told anybody this. I'll tell you. You know what okay, and this does connect into something else that I would also like to talk to you about. Okay. But you know how I mentioned that sometimes it's hard to do things for fun because there are jobs now, you know? Yeah. Like, and so I feel like I have to be creative in other ways to like find fun. And one of the ways that I do that is by like, I love horror movies. I can't watch comedy movies anymore, but I love watching horror because that's the one thing I can't dissect. That's a genre I don't know. So that's just something I have to enjoy. But something that I do on my own time is super funny. You cannot make fun of me. Sometimes I write raps. Just because like that's not the genre that like I listen to very often. Like I have my favorite rappers. I love Doechii, I love Chance, but that's like it. You know? That's not it. But you know what I mean? Like I write raps as like a way of like, you know, trying to like, okay, how can I switch up the flow? How can I do something different? How can I do something interesting that's true to me, that feels real? But like, that's not something that like I, you know, would perform in front of people.
But do you perform it or do you just write it down? You is it rhythmically in your head or do you?
I say it out loud to myself and then I look up beats online. I'm just like, yo, it's Alex Love on the track.
And it's kind of like a break in case of emergency. If there is a rap battle nearby,
I swear to God, I am always prepared. Like I'm always ready in case somebody is like, "Hey, this bitch is messing with your set," and I'm just like, "What? Let's go!" You know. But like I said, it's mostly just like because because comedy is no longer a hobby. It's no longer a fun thing I do. Now it's a way that I have to make money or else I will die.
Yes.
And so now it's like I have to find a bunch of other ways to stay creative. I took up painting. I took up writing raps. I still play guitar. You know, I have to be creative in these other ways because if my brain just does comedy, it atrophies and it makes my comedy brain weaker.
Oh, yes. Yes, totally. Yeah. I'm writing, you know, science fiction short stories for fun. And really? I mainly watch, like boring documentaries and things like that to get by.
I love that.
But what you may have answered this already. How do you feel about that first pursuit now?
Like I said, it was something that created a cushion around me, kind of saved my butt a couple of times at home. And it was something that I took a lot of ownership over it. My mom didn't like me to sing in public for whatever reason. And so once I was old enough to kind of just make those decisions by myself, it became an autonomy thing. It became a thing I'm doing this because I can, and because no one can stop me. No one can physically stop me from getting up on stage. And I was okay. I was never going to be Adele, but I was okay. Now in retrospect, I feel like that's an industry that I would not if I were actually really trying to be a musician right now, I don't know if I would fail, but I know that I would be disheartened right now. I didn't know until Chaperone's speech that they don't have health insurance. I'm like, damn, the Writers Guild gives us health insurance. SAG has health insurance. What do you mean that you guys don't have health insurance? And it's there's no way for you to kind of do music. Because there's no way to do it without being hyper successful. You would have to have a bunch of jobs in between. At least comedy, or at least writing television, movies and stuff. I could possibly go do other stuff, and get health insurance, But I don't know much about the music industry today, obviously. But it is still something that I admire people that do it so much. I think that there's a level of genius that's involved with making a great musical performance that I guess I never had the urge to figure out the science behind it the way that I had the urge to figure out the science behind comedy.
But you could still become an incredible producer of music. You could become that mysterious woman.
Timothy, I am 32 years old.
yeah, but maybe you could write. You
want me to write Pink Pony Club? What do you want me to do here?
Does her doesn't write all her own music, right? You could write music for Beyonce. You know what's so mysterious to me is the behind the scenes process of Beyonce's music.
Yes. And I think and that's something that I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and sometimes I feel when you are at a certain level of writing music, developing music, I feel sometimes it sounds overproduced to the untrained ear. Again, I'm not a professional musician. But my fear would be that I'm always overproducing or underproducing things. I would never feel comfortable about I did this exactly right. I barely, and again, I've been doing comedy for 10 years. I barely feel that way about anything I write. But I think ultimately I'm too much of a perfectionist to ever truly be I can make a career in music. So I say all this to say that I'm glad that what music did for me, because playing guitar and singing in front of your whole school, knowing that all of these kids hate me and call me slurs, knowing they're cheering for me when I'm on stage, And I realized when I'm on stage, I'm completely invincible. Nobody can tell me shit. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I did poetry, which is something probably my first real thing. Whether I'm doing poetry, music, comedy, nobody has ever come at me sideways in that way,
Yeah.
And so that's what I take from music and my time doing music live and stuff like that is I still have that feeling of feeling invincible. No matter what happens, even if I'm bombing my ass off, there's nothing that can really hurt me when I'm up there. I feel 100% safe, unless I'm back in San Jose. Then I'm get me the fuck out of here. These people are maniacs.
we kind of sped through an intriguing nugget of information. I don't know if it's totally fine if you don't want to dive into this, but you said that your mom didn't like for you to sing in public, which
she didn't love it.
Fascinating.
I think it's because I grew up in the church and stuff like that. And so for us, I think you'll appreciate this. For people that grew up in the church, our idea of being a good singer was up here. It was Aretha. It was and I never really, because the music that I listened to growing up, I was a pop punk kid, I thought that if I could match Hillary Duff, I was if I'm better than Hillary Duff, I'm a very good singer, And when I was younger, I was still figuring things out. Maybe I wasn't as strong. Maybe I wasn't as good. My mom was always afraid that I was going to get embarrassed, and I never did. There were moments that I'm sure that I was nervous, but it was only because I was scared about what she was going to think. I never felt no. Even the kids that hated my guts, never once did they come after me and be like, oh, you sucked at the talent show today. They were just like, yeah, you're pretty good. Whatever. Get back in that locker. And then I grew up, I got a little bit older, my voice matured, and then it became not an issue for her anymore. Like at a certain point, like after I was like maybe 12, like she was like, okay, you're okay. Like we won't feel weird about it if you go up there and sing. And by then, like I had already kind of like comedy brain a little bit had kicked in, because I was watching, by the time I was 11, I was on Comedy Central nonstop, And so like singing was still like a very fun thing. But in my mind, I was just like, wait, can I make money from being a comedian? Because that would be crazy.
Well, have your parents seen your stand-up?
Yeah, they have. And they have always been very supportive of my stand-up career, which is hilarious. because I was a very smart kid. I got okay grades, but I was like the idea for me, my whole family, I was the first person to go to college. The idea in my whole family was like, oh, Alex is going to be the one that like, gets like the law degree. Alex is going to be the one that becomes a Supreme Court judge. Alex can be the president. And I was like, I want to be a stand-up comedian, and here's my act. And they were like, what the fuck? Like everybody was like, they were kind of mad, but also just like, okay, well, this is what she likes. This is like a fun hobby. Like, go ahead and do it. And then like, once it became clear that it was a priority, it was like, okay, well, comedy can't be a priority because your priority has to be your security. My parents are older. They were like, we're not going to be around forever. I didn't come from money. We came from, the fucking hood in East Oakland. We were like, if you want to do this, you can, but you can't live here. And then, it became evident that I was good at it, good enough that like, it wasn't like me going up and just wasting my time. Like it was something that I'm seriously pursuing, but they didn't back off. They didn't remove the idea from their heads about me, focusing on other career paths until I got Fallon. The day that I got Fallon, they were like, okay. It wasn't like an egg in their face, like they're eating their words. Like they always believed in me. They were always like, hey, you're really funny. We love everything that you do on stage. But they were always always prioritize security. And that's why that leap for me was so scary, because I was like, this is like a moment that like, I might be entering into an industry that does not have a lot of security. But it was also at that moment that they were like, okay, well, we always thought you were good because you were our daughter, and your friends always thought you were good because you've been doing stand-up in San Francisco for however long. Yeah. But now it's like, NBC thinks you're good, and so that became like a thing, like, and it, it came with a lot of money, and so instantly my parents were like, maybe we were wrong. Maybe security looks a lot of different ways now. And they were not wrong. They were totally right. I should not have done that.
Well, I had a similar, there is that sense of pride when you get that first, solid gig from comedy.
Yeah.
And it reminded me.
Was Fallon your first job?
No. I wrote for the reboot of All That before Fallon.
Right.
That was my first TV writing job. Okay. But then I've lived too many lives. Alexandria.
You lived a lot of lives.
I was a podcast producer. I was a I worked at a Dunkin' Donuts. I worked at a California Pizza Kitchen. I worked at 2 movie theaters.
You worked at 2 movie theaters?
Yeah, I worked at Vice. I worked at First Look Media. I was a web producer on Why It's Snacks Problem Areas. Huh?
You just reminded me that I also ran a podcast for like 2 years. I ran an in-studio podcast that I used to have to wake up on Sunday morning, drive to the studio in San Francisco. And honestly, I think it made me better at comedy, because I used to just bring comedians on every single week, and we used to just talk about the art of comedy. And wow, I really forgot about that. We really lived a lot of lives. Because that was a big part of my life for like a long time. Yes. We just end up amassing these things.
But you reminded me, talking about the singing stuff. I do feel like Black people will let you get away with almost anything if you can sing.
If you can sing. And I
can sing. That's the only way we can explain Michael Jackson, R. Kelly.
Yes.
It's like, and as soon as they start to falter a little bit with the singing, that's when the shit goes down.
100%, But like in my mind, because I was listening to white music, I was like, yeah, better than those people. But like, I never got to like the level of like, like what like they would listen to on gospel Sundays or whatever.
Yeah.
But like,
not like a Yolanda Adams. Yeah.
Yes. I never got to like, Aretha, but it did, there was a point that like, they were like, okay, like she could, but again, just like with stand up, my saving grace was the music writing. Like it was always the writing. Like, I was kind of, I would compare myself closer to Taylor Swift. Like I was never a phenomenal singer, but I did understand how like functionally how writing music worked. And I understood how to like make people feel things with writing. I've always wanted to do that. Like I remember when I was really little, I wrote a poem. I was maybe like 7. I wrote a poem that like made my teacher cry. And so I was like, oh, I have to do this again because it's really funny to do. And then I just kept like writing like these tearjerker poems, not like about everything. I would just write like a poem about like a flower that grew in my grandmother's garden or something that would like get like an A+ at like a book thing. And I just loved making people feel things with the things that I was writing. And then maybe that's why I moved away from music, because I was like, I can do writing in everything, And
it's a crazy skill. I think whenever I do perform, I think it's insane that I'm just saying a series of words with the right cadence, and it's making people's voices spontaneously combust with like it's crazy.
It's crazy that laughter is like an involuntary response. Like I think that it's so like the science behind how you make people laugh, and not to let's take for example my amazing boss Taylor Tomlinson. I think that she truly, and I would say this even if I wasn't working there, I think that she is one of the best comedians working today, and I think that it's like for most of us, like what you hope with comedy is that you have like a pocket of laughter for like every single part of the room. Like something makes this person laugh, something makes these people laugh. If you're lucky in a 10-minute set, you might have 8 minutes of everybody laughing, but mostly it's going to be pockets, But like for people that are really, really good, like Tomlinson, like Bird, like all these different people, like the people that have figured out the science of making everybody laugh, like I think that they're alchemists, dude. Like that's what I mean when I say capital C comedy, because like that's something that is like the average person. And let me tell you, these men in Los Angeles, they think every single time they're like, oh yeah, I could do that. No, you fucking cannot. Because everybody thinks that they're funny until you have to make everybody laugh. Like you're funny to your friends because y'all have the same sense of humor. Like how do you connect with people that don't know you or are not from the same town as you, Like that's the part of it that I find to be magical. Like, how do you get these people that you don't know to have an involuntary reaction to something? And I think that's fucking, and you do that too, man. You do that with your show. You do that with all the lives you lived. It's really hard. People don't understand how hard it is,
it's crazy. Okay. So, but the last thing I want to talk about is, and again, it's another thing you don't have to talk about if you don't want to, is how you've navigated the gap in time from the Tonight Show to After Midnight, which I know is a frightening sensation.
Oh my God, it was so scary. I got really lucky with a couple of jobs that really helped. The master's degree did not help as much as I would hope. I like to joke that a master's degree for me is like a strapless bra. It doesn't really... It does something for other people, but it's not really holding everything together for me. But I was lucky again because like, I also had like a passion for gaming. I love playing video games so much. And I had a friend that also loves playing video games. And he was like, hey, we're making this game, like come over here, Wow. And that was so cool. Yes, that's the part about this whole industry, because that came much later. That came like right before After Midnight came calling, So there was some lean months, and that's like the time that like there was a period in between Fallon and between, After Midnight where I was like, maybe that was a fluke. Like maybe this just wasn't something that was supposed to happen to me. Maybe I had like a bunch of negative thoughts going through my head about, I never really considered quitting comedy, but there was a moment that I was just like, maybe that was my one shot and I blew it and that's okay.
Well, first of all, you didn't blow it. Let's be fair. We all know.
No, we all know how this show operates and everything like that. But I like I said, I'm a perfectionist. I see myself as like, if I was really perfect, then nothing bad would have ever happened to me, and I would have been in a better situation, and I would have been able to bounce right back. But here's the thing: is that after I left Fallon of my own volition, Not sure. But we had like a nationwide, like all Hollywood strike. Like SAG went on strike, the DGA went on strike, I think for a little while, and the Writers Guild went on strike. So work dried up until like now, And so even if you are in the situation where like, you do leave a show of your own volition, or, you're in a good place, like something could happen that's huge and terrible. And then you're SOL for a little while. And I feel like there's like this huge leap of faith that like you have to really fucking believe in yourselves. You have to believe in yourself more than your agents do, more than Hollywood does, more than any boss you've ever had. And especially for people of color, and especially for women, like I have to believe that I'm the fucking shit, because everybody is going to second guess me, especially now, because they think that everybody got stuff because of DEI. And it's just like, no, I clawed over dead bodies to get that first job,
And even if we did get over DEI, fuck it. How'd you get your thing? It's like everybody's getting. we're all just gangsters here. You got it from
generational wealth and white privilege. Like, let me have my fucking DEI, So, like, there was a period of like me kind of really internalizing it deeply, taking it very, very seriously, and kind of going through everything I did. There was a lot of low points there. And I am so sure that the low points are not too far away now. But I think that's just like the discomfort of being an entertainer and like having that be your full-time gig. Like unless you are, I feel like even like the Hollywood strike taught us that even people that are famous, that are on a certain level, like when that work dries up, it affects you.
They start a podcast.
Speaking from experience, Tim.
When things get low, they start a podcast. The famous people start messing with the trying to get famous people's game.
That's right. Drag John Krasinski. Drag him.
I'm just saying, there's more than one reason Ted Danson has a podcast.
I didn't even know that he had one, but that's so good to know.
The man just loves to work, and then there's no work in Hollywood for a bit. It's like,
listen, we all love to work, man. Ted, I will ghostwrite for you, baby. I will do it.
But this has been this is like the first time we truly got to know each other. This is great.
This is so fun, pal. Next time I'm in New York, let's get a drink, let's get dinner, okay? It'll be fun.
Yes. Yeah. And congrats on all of your success. I hope you're having a lot of fun over there. And it really is such a fun show. I really didn't know. I was like, they're bringing back the Twitter game show thing.
Dude, this show was a big deal. At midnight was a big deal for me. I was like, I'm going to be at midnight one day. I feel so that's the thing about like getting through like I had this, I'm going to share this with you, and I swear to God, I'm gonna let you go because I know you have a busy night. But there was a really bad nightmare that I had like 2 weeks before I got After Midnight. I had this dream that like I was like in like this big smoky street, and I couldn't breathe. And I was having like this like panic attack, and then I just kept going through the smoke, and I got to like this big party with like all of my friends where everybody was like, "Hey, where have you been? Like, we've been waiting for you." And I kind of woke up with this like thought in my head. I was like, get through the smoke and then get to the party. And that's all I need to do. And then like I got through that smoke, and then I got this show, and it felt like I was being rewarded for perseverance, not being necessarily being rewarded for talent. Because we all know it goes back and forth. But I feel like if anybody, like if you really, really want to do something and you don't see the party, like I feel like just keep it going, keep going through the smoke. The party's there. I don't know.
It feels like you're writing lyrics to me. That sounds like
I'm dropping bars, man. I'm doing this for free.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a dare I say, a bop of a chorus. Get through the smoke and go to the party.
Maybe I'll hit the keys tonight. I
don't know. And that's why I didn't say at the night show, because I say things like a bop of a chorus.
We're gonna have to. Okay, well, I'll come back to New York. You, me, and your wife will get dinner, and then you tell me about your experience at the show.
Oh, yes.
I would love to hear that.
Oh, yes. And that's the show. Big thanks to Alexandria Love for joining me. For more information about her, visit her at alexandriacomedy.com. Freddie Nunez created and sings the You Are the Genre theme song, and Adam Smith produced it. And next episode, I'll tell you who the next episode is with when that comes out. But for my paid subscribers who have been like, where are my advanced episodes? You're going to get a lot of advanced episodes this week and in the weeks to come. This is Tim Barnes signing off with your weekly reminder that you are the genre.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make